Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Sean from Tested.
So hopefully by now you've seen our amazing build of Sean's Ghost Trap replica. It's a painstakingly accurate replica of the Ghost Trap from Ghostbusters,
yes.
Which it's incredible not just for its accuracy, but also from how it's designed and made. It's 3D printed.
It is, completely.
And we showed you how it works, how you designed it, but we also wanted to show you how it all comes together. Now there are kits of this Ghost Trap available, but Sean, you've also graciously release the files, the 3D print files.
Yes, the files are available to download. You can see the information below.
And if you've printed them out, the assembly process isn't trivial, but it's not too difficult either. So today, we're gonna walk through the entire build process of the Ghost Trap and show you how it all comes together. Even if you haven't printed it out yourself, I think it's gonna be a really fun journey.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to put together. And it's about 50, a little over 50 parts, so there's a lot of pieces. And as we talked about in the other videos, I decided to put it together with nuts and bolts, actual screws, both for aesthetic reasons and for structural stability, modability, and it just looks really cool. So yeah.
Over 50 pieces all laid out, knolled out here on this workbench, and assembling it, well, it just boils down to 10 basic steps.
Yeah, so let's get started. So we're gonna need some Allen, all of these are our socket Allen head screws for the most part. So I find that these work really well. These are Weeha with a little swivel top because you can get really good downward pressure because you're gonna be threading into the plastic. So you need some good pressure. So regular Allen keys are not the best choice. This is another good choice, a little like a T-handle or even just a regular screwdriver that you can put bits into is a very good choice as well. So I'd recommend trying to pick up some of those if you decide to do this.
Any other tools you might need? Adhesives, glues?
X-Acto, a little bit of glue, like super glue works okay, and Phillips, a flathead, but relatively simple amount of tools. Maybe you might need like a little file or nail file, and that's about it. And we'll kind of talk about it as we go along.
All right, so step one, putting together the top.
The top, yes. So the top piece here, this is a good example of where 3D printing is awesome, we showed the smoke effect. And by 3D printing, what that allowed us to do is actually 3D model a pipe that runs around the lip in here that has outlets along here that allow the smoke to come out. Now for this 3D only one, we're not gonna be using that, but it doesn't matter. They got the inlet right there and you can see like the holes. So what I did is there's a insert that you can print out just to put this so there's not a blank space, And if you wanted to, you could put some lights under this and make this light up, and this is simply glued into place. So with the top, if you were doing the deluxe version, you would also have these LED holders that have a whole bunch of holes to screw those in place. And then there's room for the speakers as well. But we're not going to be using that in this particular case. So before you get started, there are uprights for the frame. So once you get this all put together, there's going to be these uprights that hold up the middle portion. You want to test fit these because with the 3D printers, everything varies a little bit. It may be a little tight, a little loose. I tend to err on the side of a little tight because you can always file it down. So you just want to test fit these. So you're just going to put them in the hole there, make sure they fit okay, clean them up a little bit with an X-Acto or some sandpaper to make sure they fit, and then you can set those aside.
Yeah, something you mentioned in terms of finishing is how much actual finishing will you need to do before you start assembly? Sanding things down, polishing things up, getting those tolerances right. Can you do that as you assemble?
You can, yes. So a good example of that is because I'm using real screws on a lot of these pieces, some holes are sized to just let them pass through. Some are sized so that they are going to cut threads into the plastic. So sometimes, depending on your printer tolerances and how your actual prints come out, you may need to do a little cleanup with an X-Acto or some drill bits for the holes. And I'm going to list in the guides I'm going to be making, I'm going to list like what size drill bit you need for this particular size screw and stuff like that. As far as finishing, so with the 3D printed only version, my goal was to have as much 3D printed stuff as possible. So everything on this is 3D printed except for the screws, and we have some magnets and some parts. And on this one, I just left everything unfinished. And part of the reason I broke this up into so many pieces is that you can print out in a bunch of different colors and don't paint anything if you want. So the only thing painted are some of these brass pieces and the red because I didn't have that particular color.
Right.
But otherwise, you can just print it in different filaments and it'll look pretty good.
And it really is a model that wears the 3D printing on its sleeve because it's a beautiful aesthetic.
Exactly. Yeah,
All right.
I think it has. So the only thing we need to do the top, we already did. We glued in the insert and we test fitted our parts. We're going to move on to the rear frame assembly now.
All right, step 2, the rear frame.
Yes, the rear frame. So this is one of the most important pieces because this is where the handle attaches. And I really wanted to be able to 3D print the handle and have it be strong enough to hold the trap, which is kind of tricky because it's all plastic. So I broke it into 2 pieces. And this has to do with how they print because when they're together, we have all these little tabs sticking out and it would be hard to print this without a lot of support. So I broke it into 2 pieces so they can print flat. And that also allowed me to print these clips for the e-cigarette for the smoke function. So these are just little spring-loaded clips that you can snap the e-cigarettes into to hold them in place if you do like a deluxe version. All right, so we're going to simply, these pass through. We're going to screw it into the handle portion. And that's where, like I said, these, getting the right screwdriver for the job. Let me use this one. Now, as you go, what you're going to find, because you're going to actually be cutting the threads into the plastic as you do this. So go slow, use good downward pressure, and be careful to not over tighten and strip out the plastic, all right? The nice thing about it's 3D printed, so you can always print another one, or in an emergency, you can put a little dab of glue to kind of hold everything together. And technically, this trap could be glued together, but then you lose the aesthetic of the screws and the sturdiness. All right. Now, the rear frame here has the option to put 6 screws in, 2 on the center here. That's a little overkill, but since this is holding the whole weight of the trap, for the deluxe version, I wanted it there, but for this, you can probably just do the outer 2. All right. So once this is together, we have the tabs, which attach it to the top portion. So we're going to do that. All right. The other thing you'll notice since we are cutting threads into the plastic, what may happen, what you may want to do is you might want to pre-thread the screws before actually assembling them. So thread the screw in, make sure it's bit in there really good, and what will happen is you'll get a little rim that raises up around the edge of the hole because it's pushing the plastic out. So then what you may do is take an X-Acto, just clean that up a little bit because it can cause some gaps between parts otherwise. All right, so we're going to get the other side here. All right, so we have the rear frame with the handle assembly attached to the top. So the next step with the rear frame is, if you chose to do it, we're going to put the magnets in for the rear top. I have 2 versions of the rear box, which is this. I have 2 versions. I have one that has magnets so that the top can go on by magnets and you can remove it for batteries and smoke unit and stuff like that. If you don't want to do that and mess around with magnets, I have another version that screws on. So you pick the rear box that you want and print that accordingly. So with this one, we have done the magnets, which just push into place. They're just friction fit, and we're not going to glue them at this point. The other thing you may want to do is take the handle screw and pre-cut the threads on that because that's a big screw and it's long and it's easier if you do it before you put the handle in.
Well, now that the rear frame is connected to the top, it's time for the front unit.
Yes, and this was the most complicated part to build because it involved the doors. And as we talked about in the in-depth video, I really wanted a way for the doors to open and close without seeing like rods coming out for the mechanism or anything like that. And that's where the whole chain drive with the servos came in. So there's multiple pieces for this. Now for this, it's much simpler because we are not going to be doing the chain drive, but it still has a lot of pieces. So this is the part that the servos and the chain drive will go into the slots for the drive mechanism. And then there's the wings, which have dovetails on them, basically. So what you may want to do for the wings is I designed them to be a very tight fit because they need to be structurally sound for the doors. So I usually will just take a file and clean up the top and bottom a little bit and test fit that to make sure that they go in. So it's simply, you kind of start it back here like this and just pops in.
It's a good fit.
Yeah.
Nice and filed. Perfect.
Right. And then there are keys that match up with the bottom portion to hold it in place. So what I did on these, once again, I wanted the real screws, which I have put in here. And so we're just going, these are completely decorative. They actually serve no purpose other than to look like real screws. So,
and that's part of the design. Again, you could have 3D printed just the screw head, but having real hardware actually adds a little bit more authenticity.
Yeah, and I did test 3D printing the screws. The problem is a lot of these heads are so small that you lose a lot of detail or they come out really messy unless you're going really slow and have the perfect orientation, which would be drawing them this way. The wings need to print like this, so these just did not print well. And this goes a little extra mile to make it look nice. So, all right, so we have the top portion, we have the wings in, we can glue in the bar graph plate. Now I have a little stand in here just so that it looks like it has something. You could put a 3mm LED in the hole if you wanted to, just to make it look nice. So again, there's just 4 screws that hold it onto the front here. So again, you'll be cutting the threads into the plastic. And these are pretty small. There's not a lot of thread, so you want to be careful that you don't cross thread anything. And like I said, worst comes to worst, you can always glue it together. It's not that big of a deal. All right, so you have the graph plate on, we have our wings on, and then it goes into the front bottom assembly. And there are tabs that basically are stoppers for this. So this simply slides together. You just butt it up to make sure that it's against the tabs in here. An optional step is to put screws in down here in the bottom. Once we put the front plate on, it is designed to hold this in place. But if you're doing the servo units, you definitely want to put these extra screws in. And I should also point out before I do that, there's a 2-step process with this. So not only are you sliding this into place, because you want to slide in from top, you're going to be putting it onto the posts right here. So you not only have to slide in place, you need to make sure that it snaps onto the posts which lock the wings in place. So slide it in from the top. Put the little screws in. So again, you know, these are easy to strip out. Don't over tighten. Okay. So we got our front unit. I got a little prop to hold it up here for us. Now, an optional step, you can put the doors on at a few different stages. I'm going to put them on right now. You can technically get them on when you have the whole top assembly done, so if you want to do it that way, that's fine. So a few things with the doors, they are keyed, so there's a left and a right. For the advanced deluxe version, there are little holes for the set screws for the axles. We don't really need to use them in this case. And the other thing I did, which I'm particularly proud of, is if you look really closely here, there are engraved lines, very faint, on top of each of these, and that is your guide for painting these stripes.
Yeah.
Because trying to figure out the correct orientation and width and everything is kind of a pain, so I just did little engraving lines on this so that you can use it as a guide. And in this case, on this particular version, I just used some yellow electrical tape and laid it down. It's the perfect width.
Perfect.
So it makes it easy. So you can clean it up with some X-Actos. Now, one of the other hardware things you will need are the pins for the doors. These are 1/8 brass that I'm using. You can use anything that's 1/8 or close. And it just simply friction fits into there. Friction fits into the wing.
And those holes were built into the model, the 3D print.
Correct.
You didn't have to actually
Yep.
get this
You
out.
might have to clean them up, like I said, with a drill bit, but they're in there. So now we're going to take and attach the front unit to the top as well. You can simply slide that in place. It has tabs just like the rear portion. All right. So this, like I said, it goes together pretty quickly, but I did this whole frame system so that it allows you to access things and mod things and install electronics and take it apart if you need to. I don't like things that are 3D printed and like once they're done, you can't do anything with them if they break or whatever. Now, if you put in the doors like we did, we're going to put in the rear door axles, which are simply screws. So there are holes already printed in the doors, and we're just going to screw those in. Now you don't want to tighten these up the whole way because you want the doors to be able to move. So just go most of the way in, leave them a little loose. All right. So like I said, you can open these up now.
All right, you got the front piece, the rear piece. Next is
the bottom.
The bottom.
So this is, we have the frame pretty much finished. We're going to do the bottom section. There's not a whole lot involved with this. So we have the wheels and axles. I have one assembled here already. Normally you would be using roller skate bearings, but we've 3D printed some wheels here. So again, these are threading right into the plastic. These are pretty big screws, so go slow. Leave these a little loose so they can spin on you. Okay, the axles then just get screwed to the bottom of the plate. All right, so now we're going to just put the top frame onto here. There's a key that fits in the back, kind of just line it up, fit those in from the front. Simply screw the rear frame into the bottom. Flip it around and do the same to the front. Now the front have deeply recessed holes because you need really long screws otherwise. So this you may need a traditional Allen key for just because of clearance.
All right, you got the top, the bottom, the front, and the back. But the back doesn't look completely fleshed out yet. Next step looks like
the rear box.
The rear box.
Yeah, so why don't you slide that over here, those pieces. So I have some pre-assembly here. The top plate, I've already glued in the toggle and the lens shade. I did a little paint on the ring. We put in the screws, which are just threaded into the plate, and they're sticking down to attach to the magnets. If you're using the optional box that you screw right into, you just screw these into the box. All right, so we have the Foster pneumatic connector right here. It has a magnet in the tip, which I've already put in, which is for connecting it to the hose. So we're going to use a little glue here, just a little dab in the bottom. This should be relatively tight fit. All right, and we're gonna put some on here. Voila, you have it glued into the back there. All right, there are just 4 screws that hold this onto the rear. There's 2 in the bottom and 2 in the rear frame. So you just slide this in place. Doesn't matter what you do first. And then the ones, these are hard to see, but there's two down inside here. And then we have the top plate, which we loosely put in the magnets. So now you're going to take that and you're going to press it down so that it pushes the magnets down to the correct level. You can put a dab of glue on them if you want. Usually they will stay in place with friction. So you have the rear finished.
All right, 4 of the 6 sides have been attached and almost finished. Means there's 2 sides left, the right side and the left side. Step 6, install the right side.
Yes, so why don't you slide those over for me, Norm? Ooh, that. And I'll grab this pile of screws. All right, so once again, all the pieces have been designed separately, and we got a few different pieces. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna start with the small plate and attach that. It actually goes through the big plate into the side panel. So do that first, which will tag this down and hold everything in place for us. So we are ready for the rest. And the nice thing about 3D printing all this stuff is that you have all the holes already in the exact right place. Everything lines up. Trying to drill this stuff by hand so all the pieces line up is kind of a nightmare. I did it for the deluxe version. It's much, much harder. But the other nice thing is you can 3D print these and use them as templates if you did want to make real plates. So this is called the vector plate. We're going to put that on next. I would recommend kind of doing all of these loose at first just because you have to have everything line up. And if you leave them a little loose, it helps you out there a little bit. This is another good example. If you have the real vector plate, which is a kind of a aluminum used for computer enclosures, you would need a mill in order to get these countersunk screw holes, which is kind of difficult.
All right, let you finish that.
Last two things are the resistor and the knob. The resistor is a great piece to 3D print because it is really hard to find the correct one anymore. All right. Now the knob, you can glue it on, you 3D print the post, and this is replicating the actual metal knob that goes on this. You can glue this on, or in the case, I actually did put a spot for set screws, so I'm actually going to screw the set screw in place. So that will allow you to take this out and put a real like switch or something in, or the real knob if you wanted to later. All right, so there is the right side. We're gonna set that aside.
All right, step 7, the left side.
Left side.
Looks pretty similar. You have the plate, you have
big plate, small plate, knob.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to screw in one side of the small plate just to hold it in place. And that should line up all the other holes. You can see I already have my stickers on. Okay, everything else should be lined up. Now we have the side rods, which are one of the pieces I did 3D print. They're countersunk on the back, and we're going to just screw those in. So hold it in place. And in this case, I did countersunk because on the deluxe version, there's a lot of electronics that actually get mounted there, and we just wanted to make sure.
You want to make it flush.
Yeah.
With this resolution of 3D printing, how accurate can you get that countersinking, like for this tiny of a screw?
It's on, say, the printer that I did for the Hellboy, which is a really high-end printer, that would be exactly accurate. This, you have to add like, 0.2 millimeters on maybe to make sure that it's going to fit right. And even then, depending on your printer and how it's printing and the layer resolution, you may need to clean them up or drill them out. But it's going to be very, very close. Okay, and last step is to put the knob on. Just like the other one, you can glue this into place, or in my case, you can use the set screw. All right.
Let's show that. All right, left side, right side, all the sides.
Gonna set this aside for now.
And now, the almost last piece is the front plate.
Yes. So the way I designed this, these, I could not find these knobs, so of course they're all 3D printed as well. And I wanted the option to be able to put real knobs in. So there are holes left on the front here for the post to go through if you wanted to do real knobs. But for our case, we're going to glue these on. They actually friction fit pretty well, but a little glue is recommended. And this is one of the other areas that I did do a little painting on, where I painted the top silver. But they do print out as one piece.
All sorts of greeblies.
Oh yes, oh my gosh. Sourcing all these pieces was a major undertaking. Even just to find them to replicate them in 3D. All right, so we got our front plate with our knobs glued in. You are going to insert this and pop each one of these into their holes. So it can be a little bit of a tight fit. You may want to clean those up a little bit with an X-Acto first. There we go.
And the knobs still work.
Yeah. All right, we're just going to the right screwdriver. There are two little, what they're called button heads that hold this on. So, like I said, not only is this holding the knobs on, it is holding the front unit, the top part of it, in place as well. All right, so front plate is done. Now there's one last thing before I put the sides on, which are these uprights. So what I found is because it's such a long 3D printed part, it would tend to sag a little bit in the middle. Yeah. Just structurally, because these are the sides are very long, they would tend to bow out a little bit as well. So I did these little uprights so that when you're all done, and for the deluxe, after you've put in your electronics, you insert the side post. Now, you want to make sure that you get the right one for each side, because what's going to happen is the screws are going to go through the side into this. So you want to make sure that you pick the one that matches the holes for that particular side. So there we go. You simply are going to put it in that top hole that we already test fit. There's a little notch that it fits in down here. You might have to lift it up a little bit, wiggle it around, make sure it seats. And then there are two little screws that go in there. And that gives us an extra place for our side panel to screw into. Thank you. So again, top tab in at a bit of an angle. Pop it into place, make sure it's seated in its recess. There we go.
All right, second to last step, let's attach those side panels.
Yes, so very straightforward. The side panels simply go on with these four corners, are the ones you're generally going to start with. They're going to screw right into the frame here. You may be tempted to use a powered screwdriver with this, which is really tempting, but you run the risk of stripping out the plastic threads, so I would stick with the manual.
And filament easy to strip.
Yes. This is
At that point, just super glue.
Exactly, yeah. Now, the last step then, we got the four main ones in, then the last ones are going to go into that support that we just went, so these are extra long, and they're a little smaller than all the other screws in diameter. So this will just pull in the middle of these long sides to make sure they're not bowing at all. So not too bad. If you have electronics in here, you have 6 screws to take off to access everything, which is not too bad. Okay, side done. Last side, exactly the same setup. You have the 4 in the corners.
And then the ones in the middle. Finish that.
And then the last one's on the middle support. All right, there you have the sides done.
All right, and then the final step to complete this ghost trap, of course, got to install the handle.
So the handle is also fully 3D printed. It has these little caps on it just to make it look kind of as a complete piece rather than fully 3D, just 3D. And it is strong enough to hold the trap. So hopefully we've pre-threaded our screws, so this goes in relatively easy. There are 2 versions of the handle, one with the screw that's recessed and one where it sticks up on top, so depending on what you like. And I made that pretty tight.
All right, Sean, so that's it. That's a ghost trap.
It's a ghost trap.
It all came together. Of course, most of the pieces are uniquely designed. They're beautifully designed so that it's easy to fit together. You have the hardware. A lot of the hardware actually connects it. There's a little bit of gluing, but not too difficult overall.
Yeah, it's a fun little half-a-day project.
Awesome. So you can't have a ghost trap, of course, without the pedal that activates it. That's also something that you designed to be 3D printed.
Yes.
And so we have that kit as well. Let's run through its components and assemble that.
Okay.
All right, the pedal. Let's talk about the pieces you have laid out here.
Yeah. So once again, 3D printed. This does have a few more actual hardware parts on it because there are some parts that were just impossible to replicate via 3D printing and look at all right. So the relay that you had is one of them. Once again, nuts and bolts holding it all together, but as much 3D printed stuff as possible.
All right, step 1, it looks like the big base.
The base, yes. So we have all kinds of channels and holes cut into the base. I've already put on the little rubber feet, which is completely optional. And I have the acorn nut on the back glued in, which it just simply glues on the back there. I have already assembled the hinge, which is another one of the real pieces, and the pedal and painted it. So this is what they call the vector plate. So one of the tricks, the hard parts, is getting the hose that is the spring basically attached to this. So we're going to start with that. And basically there is the top portion. It has a little lip that kind of fits on the ridges here. You want to have the front portion, which is the rib part, facing forward. And this is a little tough to get in, but it needs to be that way so that it doesn't come apart on you. Okay. We're going to then take the bottom portion, which also has a rim, which is going to face up, and it goes onto the bottom here.
And these are mounts to help the top part of the pedal, the bottom pedal, stretch out the hose as you depress and release.
Mounting the hose has been a traditionally tricky problem for the traps. So then you're going to just friction fit this on there. The little lip should catch onto the thing, and give it a few turns and make sure it's on there nice. All right. Okay. We're going to now attach the pedal. So we've already done the nuts and bolts to the top and painted it. Okay. One of the other few 3D printed parts or non-3D printed parts are these tubings, which I put little inserts for those. If you want to be accurate, I think the red goes first. And they just friction fit into place. And then this simply goes onto the hose. Now there's I engraved a little thing so you can kind of line it up. And this is another place where you're going to glue. So we're going to put some super glue up here. As long as it's close, it doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to clamp this so that it will all right, so just let that sit for a little bit.
Awesome, that's the base. Step 2 for the pedal, looks like you have also a left box and a right box.
Yes, so we're gonna start with the left box, which is a little pile of parts there. Now these are actual project boxes that you can buy. I was able to get the 3D files and modify them. And the nice thing is it prints out with all the holes in the right place. Now, one of the things I did is if you get the actual project boxes, I made this 3D printable template, which prints out flat, and then you can put it onto the real box to mark all your holes.
Nice.
So then it lines up with the 3D printed base. So that's an optional file. So with these, this is an actual computer connector called a D-sub connector. I've replicated it in 3D because they're one of those things that are hard to find again, as are a lot of the parts on these traps. And it's going to screw into the back of the box here. You can choose to put nuts on the inside if you need to, or you want it a little more sturdy. And that's when I stab myself. D-sub connector. Now there's all kind, and forgive me, Ghostbuster fans, if I get these wrong, but there's a whole bunch of crazy other parts that needed 3D printing because they're hard to find. I believe this one is called the banjo, which is some kind of fitting. I actually have a real nut for that as well. And you can either screw or glue this to the top. Either one will work. All right. The banjo has a little cap, which is red. I already glued that in place. This one, I believe, is the nye coil, which is a little nut and peg combination. So the peg goes in the back. I had that wrong. This is the wrong one. The peg goes in the back. We're going to put a little glue on that. There you go. And then we're going to do the Foster connector. Once more, we have a magnet that's already been put in there. This is one of the few pieces that I painted. So again, use a little super glue. Or a lot. All right. We're then going to screw this to the left side of the base. There are holes in there for that. Okay. We already put the cap onto the banjo, so you simply insert the hose. We also have a cap for the nye coil. I'm going to put that on. And this can friction fit or be glued into place.
Left box installed.
Yes.
The right box, it's similar, but also a bunch of different hardwares.
This relay, which is an electrical component, the origin was Italian and you cannot find it at all. So I've used one that is very, very, very close. They also come in 11 and 8 pin configurations. The original was 11 pin. So what I've done is there are sockets that are 8 or 11. You print it out according to what you have. So to put this together, you're going to decide on the orientation on how you want it. And then based on how the plate fits, you're going to slide on the other pieces accordingly. This has a little lip that faces upwards. Friction fits on there. You can glue it if you want. Then the plate, once again, you can glue that if you want. And the base, like that. So you have that. We're going to put the screws in. And then the whole assembly goes onto the top of the box. You can also add some glue to this if you want, but if you do it right, the screws should hold it into place pretty well. Don't over tighten this because you'll bend the very thin plastic plate, but it should hold on there pretty well.
And the point is, for this one, you want to see the screw exposed.
Exactly, because that's accurate to how the original prop was, yes. All right, I've already glued on the 3D printed lens shade. We're going to now put on the ribbon connector. There's a lot of computer connectors that they use on this, so this is a replica of one of those. It's pretty close. The only thing I couldn't get on there were the pins that are part of it, but you don't miss them too much. So it screws onto the front. And then once again, we're going to screw this onto the other side of the pedal base. Okay. So one thing you may notice is variations in the print. When you screw your boxes on, they may skew a little outwards or inwards. If you have that problem, what you can do is put some little shims of paper or plastic right down here as you screw them on, and it should straighten them up pretty well.
We're getting close here with the pedal. The last big step is the ribbon assembly.
The ribbon assembly. The ribbon assembly is kind of important because it actually is what they hang the pedal from the trap on their belts with. So the trap goes on the belt and then the pedal hangs over the handle. So I wanted to try to make it so that you could actually do that, so it needed to be secure. So we have a few pieces for that. We are using a real piece of computer ribbon cable, you know? I've already have cable ties on it to cinch it up, and I have punched holes with like a belt punch towards the ends, which are going to be used on our connectors here. So these are duplicating computer ribbon connectors, which are getting really hard to find. And you also have to figure out what the heck the name was. So we've duplicated these computer connectors. The ribbon connector, we're going to start with the left-hand side one. And you kind of just tent this over the peg and push it down over the top of it. And what these pegs are doing are they're not only helping holding it together, but it is giving strain support so you can hang this. So one of the important things is making sure you put these on in the right orientation. So I have the crease facing outwards with the edge of this edge connector facing outwards as well. We go to the other side, and once again, we have a post and hole setup. This one needs to go like so. So we're going to go from the back. I'm going to get a little glue on this. You can put glue on the edges as well if you like. I'm just going to do it on these sides. So we should have a thing that's pretty sturdy to hold this. So we're going to go to the pedal. We got the D sub connector. Gonna put some glue on this. It gets glued to the D sub, like so. And then this side just snaps into it. And this actually snaps in like a real computer connector. Wow. So once this is dry, this should be sturdy enough that you can hang it from the belt.
All right, with the ribbon done, now can you put on these box lids?
Yeah, I leave the lids off to the very last because in case you need to get in here or you knock something loose storing it, but they have a little lip that just fits right in there. You can simply then put the screws in.
Any idea what you might want to actually put inside those boxes?
I left electronics. So what I did is I actually modeled holes in the base of the pedal that go to the side boxes. So you can run electronics from the spring-loaded hose to each box. So we could put a blinking light, or we can put the triggering mechanism for the trap. So if you wanted to actually wire up the trap. Okay, so there we have the
All right, so pedal, it's like 99% done. You got the trap. They got to connect together.
They do, yes.
Got to use the hose.
So I have 3D modeled and 3D printed the pneumatic connectors, which are very hard to find, the real ones. And what we did with these is there's space inside to put a magnet, just like we did for the male tip. So you want to make sure you put them in the correct configuration so they snap together. And then the female just simply glues together and gets inserted. There's an actual real hose in here, just for, you know, the structure. So they should just kind of friction fit and magnet on. There you go.
And there you go. It is a completed ghost trap. The trap and the pedal mechanism, almost entirely 3D printed, even the vintage computer components, 3D printed, those connectors. And of course, you could print this model yourself. Information about where to get that model is below. Sean, of course, you have detailed write-ups about this. But we hope you enjoyed watching the assembly of this 3D printed ghost trap. And we also have to, of course, thank Dremel for giving us this opportunity to have Sean design and assemble this trap with many more projects on Tested to come. If you're assembling this, we'd love to see photos of your project and place your questions and comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
See you. Thank you.